Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I get into today's review, do want to remind you if you enjoy the Gaming Gang and you'd like to become a member of our Patreon, you will find a link to that down in the show notes. And of course, be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. You'll find an invite to our Discord server also in those show notes. So today I am going to share my thoughts on Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Deft Steps Light Fingers from Cubicle 7 Games. This 144-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $39.99, which includes the PDF if you order from Cubicle 7 Games. Or if you want to just grab the PDF alone, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $19.99. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Deft Steps Light Fingers for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. A couple of things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, the fine folks over at Cubicle 7 Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside. And I have to say, there's a ton packed into these 144 pages. First thing we're going to do is take a look at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life. So let's give credit where credit is due. Deft Steps Light Fingers is dedicated to both the Rogue and Ranger careers in WFRP. And we're going to start off with a discussion of the cult of Ranald, who is the god of thieves, gambling, trickery, and protector of the helpless. And I've got to say, I find this deity to be really interesting because they have various different sects. They have various different aspects of the pantheon. So we have the thieves, we've got the tricksters, the con artists, chicanery going on. But then we also have protectors and liberators who would worship Ranald. So very nicely done. We get a good amount of page space devoted to this deity. We get movers and shakers. What are the relationships between the other gods of the old world? Really, really good stuff. Now, it's important to keep in mind, Ranald isn't necessarily publicly worshipped like other deities in the old world, but there are still temples, there are still priests of Ranald, and we've got some new careers here. In fact, we have 4 new priests of Ranald. We've got the gambler priest, the trickster priest, the thief priest, as well as the liberator priest. And I found these to be really cool careers because it gives players an opportunity to play as a rogue character, but also have the ability to utilize some different miracles. So they get to dip their toes into magic as well. So I thought that was pretty cool. Also, should point out there is a good amount of page space that is devoted to criminal endeavors of all types: burglary, chicanery, and fraud. We have information about grave robbing and fencing and burglary, different endeavors that the player characters can take on. Now, it's important also to note that the player characters do not have to be rogues. They do not have to be criminals in order to take part in criminal endeavors. We'll also get information about creating your own criminal gang and organized crime, which, interestingly enough, Ranald frowns upon. Ranald doesn't like organized crime. And there is a discussion about that in the book as well. We will get some interesting criminal patrons, as well as information about creating those criminal patrons. And I gotta say, if you have any criminal player characters in your Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay adventures or campaigns, this is pretty much a must-have. It really, really is. Now, the second part of the book is dedicated to the god of the wild, Taal. And I will say, I find Ranald to be a far more interesting deity, a little more unusual. Taal tends to be kind of par for the course as far as wilderness gods, gods of the wild tend to be in fantasy role playing games, but still very interesting nonetheless. Now, we will get a ranger priest for Taal, and we get more criminal endeavors in the wilderness. So we have banditry, highwaymen, so on and so forth. But as far as the cult itself, we will also once again get movers and shakers of the cult, as well as adventure hooks throughout. So, like many Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay releases, we'll get these side boxes, and some of them have a little fish hook, which will give game masters some really good ideas on how to utilize what you're looking at, what you're reading about in an adventure, or create an encounter with that. We have information about different degrees of punishment, convicts, banditry, outlaws. Of course, we've got bounty hunters. We have gamekeepers, because we'll actually get into some information about wilderness gameplay, which is utilized by anyone. You don't have to be criminals, because we have wilderness travel. We've got weather, pathfinding. We have hunting, information about hunting lodges. We have gamekeepers and poachers as new careers as well. But as you can see, we have a few pages devoted to each of these topics, and just a ton of really good information and useful information packed into this. Here's another of our new careers, the Mule Skinner. We do have 9 new careers in the book, as well as some new magic. We have some new beasts, but they're regular animal stat blocks. So there's only a few. I think there were 3, if I remember correctly. So, like example, we had hounds, hawks. Here's our hunting lodge, and this is how we're going to wrap up the book. So we get a typical hunting lodge. So really, really nicely done. I always like to see these new volumes come out with a lot more information about the various different deities in the old world and their worshipers, and how we actually intertwine that together with the player characters. We get a lot of downtime activities in this book too. So all in all, just a very, very useful volume for WFRP. So we'll wrap up with an index, and that is a peek inside Deft Steps Light Fingers for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Let's swing on over to the other camera. I'm going to share some final thoughts as well as my review score. Well, it's pretty obvious the way I've been talking about Deft Steps Light Fingers. I really like this book. I do enjoy the thievery, the rogues, the tricksters aspect of the first half a little bit more than I do the wilderness stuff that's further on. For one, as I already mentioned, I find the god Ranald to be a far more interesting deity than the god of the wilderness. But all in all, there's still a lot of useful information and cool stuff in the second half of the book, too. I don't want you to think, well, it's only the first half of the book that's any good, and then it just falls off a cliff. That's certainly not the case. Now, of course, if you are a game master and you're running a WFRP campaign that features 1 or 2 criminals in your cast of player characters, or maybe even more, maybe they're all criminals, then Deft Steps Light Fingers is a must-have. You must own this as part of your collection, because you're going to get so much use out of it. Now, if you don't have any criminal characters and you don't really want to deal with that aspect of the old world, okay, this isn't as much of a must own, but still, there is a lot of content within which is very usable for any game master of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So, on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Deft Steps Light Fingers a 9 out of 10. That good? Really liked it. Enjoyed the hell out of reading it. I think we've got some new careers in here that are very interesting. I like the new miracles. I like the fact that we get the ability for players to take on the roles of rogue priests, priest rogues, trickster priests, things like that. I think it adds a nice wrinkle to the available rogue careers. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell because it'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you will not find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.